They're trying to send me to jail. The president said I should be hanged. I should be executed. They want to prosecute me. They want to demote me. They want to take away my pension. So whether you're an individual, a retired service member like myself, a U.S. senator, or a country that feels like this guy has stepped over the line, stand up for yourself. We've seen other countries that are like, this guy's being a bully and we're not going to take it.
In the dead of night, when you're weighing all this up, you're getting death threats. It's really difficult to live like that, I'm assuming.
And in the dead of night,
Yeah.
I'm asleep. I am not losing any sleep over this guy. I mean, I've nearly been shot down multiple times. I flew on a spaceship that could nearly blow up on me, so I've been through a lot in my life. I am not going to let this guy intimidate me.
My guest today is a US Navy combat pilot turned astronaut turned senator. But after a career of public service and chain of command, he's more recently been urging serving officers to refuse orders they believe are illegal, sparking Trump to label it seditious behavior punishable by death, though he later walked that back. So if my guest thinks serving military officers need to disobey the president's orders, how does he think the UK and the rest of the world should deal with Donald Trump? Senator Mark Kelly, welcome to Talking Politics.
Well, thank you for having me on, Tom.
It's a great pleasure to have you here. Let's just pause a moment to actually have a listen to that video.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
and intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
like us. You all swore an oath.
To protect and defend this Constitution.
Right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad, but from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
I mean, imagine a former military officer of your distinction. It's a pretty big deal to make a public video with some of your colleagues suggesting that, reminding officers that their oath is to the Constitution and they should disobey illegal orders. Did you do that in part because you were getting a lot of disquiet? I mean, you must have contact with a lot of serving military officers. Was part of it to do with a degree of disquiet you were hearing from them about some of what they were being asked to do?
Well, we were hearing from active duty service members, some, just issues with they know who this guy is, right? And we do as well. He has said he's going to send the U.S. military into cities and use those cities for the military to train. What that means to me is U.S. citizens would be used as the perceived enemy. And that's over a line, for us. So myself and 5 others, 2 former CIA officers and 3 other veterans, we decided that we should just remind people of something really basic, something you hear early in your military training. I heard it when I was a student at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, that when the law and orders are in conflict, you follow the law and you do not follow unlawful orders. We've seen historically when there have been illegal orders given and military members have followed it and horrific things have happened. So we're just trying to get in front of it. We didn't think we were going to get a reaction from him. I didn't think Donald Trump would say anything about this. And if he said anything, he might say something like, well, of course.
Well, he was obviously very exercised about it.
He was.
Taken you to court, tried to prosecute you.
Well, I'm actually taking him to court.
Yeah, well, he's completely failed, obviously. He tried to reduce your pension and demote you, or Pete Hegseth did. That's ended in, far, the court rejecting it.
Yeah, there's a couple different things here. I have a lawsuit against the Secretary of Defense for trying to demote me and take some of my pay. They also tried to indict me and send me to prison for something I said. I mean, this is right out of the authoritarian playbook. You don't like what the people in the legislature says, you throw them in jail.
But not a single member of the grand jury voted to indict, which kind of indicates that so far the system is holding.
Which is also pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
The lawyers I've spoken to, they've never heard of a unanimous decision by a grand jury not to indict somebody.
We're very focused here, inevitably, or have been over the last few months, on Greenland, and perhaps we'll debate whether that whole business is over. But I'm interested to know, do you think serving military officers would have obeyed an order to occupy Greenland? And do you think it would have been legal? Obviously, NATO, America's membership of NATO is a treaty ratified by Congress. If asked to occupy Greenland by the president, would it be legal and would people follow that?
Boy, that gets to a lot of complicated constitutional issues, which is not what we were talking about. We were talking about, this kind of lower level command, you're asked to do something. Would a reasonable person think this was legal or illegal? Those things that are obvious. We're not asking, and we weren't recommending that anybody get into any kind of whether a president has the constitutional authority for large-scale operations. That's not what this was about. You know, this was about your commanding officer telling you to do something that is unethical, immoral, and against the law. So that's a different discussion. To answer your question about, I mean, whether this Greenland thing is over or not, who knows? I think only one person knows that. I was in Munich last weekend, and I met with the Prime Minister of Denmark and the Prime Minister of Greenland. And unlike the other leaders, other prime ministers I sat down with and foreign and defense ministers who communicated to us that like the trust between our countries is broken. I mean, that doesn't come close to how Denmark and Greenland feel about this. They feel threatened. They're angry. And my sense is they're not getting over this anytime soon.
I want to come on and talk about that, but just to focus in on Greenland, I mean, you served with great distinction. If you were a serving military officer now, and the president said, right, I want you to go and occupy Greenland against the wishes of Denmark, I mean,
I would have a lot of questions. I mean,
what would you do? What do you think serving military officers in the reality?
Well, when you have
that
questions about this, you discuss it with your leadership, and you're like, hey, is this the right thing to do? Don't we have a treaty? I mean, isn't Denmark an ally? I mean, these are the things you would be talking about, and ultimately, you start talking to the JAG officers, which are the lawyers in the U.S. military. Is this something we should be doing? I imagine in that case, you might even have people, reaching out to their, member of Congress. But again, that was not the point of the six of us, sending this very basic message, which is more, at the tactical level for members of the military.
Yeah, I get that. I guess we don't know here whether we're going to get to the point that I'm talking about, do we? I mean, like if, and I'm sort of, every time it comes up, I think to myself, well, if you're a serving military officer, and we'll get on to talk about this because I'm interested to know how you would advise us to react.
Well, here's how I would advise, just like any bully, you got to stand up to bullies. I mean, I'm in a situation right now where they're going after trying to send me to jail. The president said I should be hanged. I should be executed. They want to prosecute me. They want to demote me. They want to take away my pension, my rank. I served 25 years in the Navy. They want to take that away from me. My suggestion to people is do not back away. I mean, that's what they want. They want to send, in this case, they want to chill speech, take away people's First Amendment rights for free speech to get them to shut up. If they send the message that they're going to come after you, that gets people to change what they're going to do and say. I'm already hearing that from retired military service members, admirals and generals, 3 and 4 stars who, spent 30, 40 years in the military are being chilled by this president attacking me. So whether you're an individual, a retired service member like myself, a U.S. senator, or a country that feels like this guy has stepped over the line, my suggestion is to, stand up for yourself and don't back down. We've seen a little capitulation, here and there, right? We've seen other countries that are like, this guy's being a bully and we're not going to take it.
We're in an impossible position, as you know. Our interdependence with you guys is so... you're well. I mean,
I sit on the intelligence. I'm on the Armed Services and the Intelligence Committee, and I mean, our intelligence agencies are like this. I mean, we're very intertwined and rely on each other.
And let's be candid about it. Our military kit doesn't. Our F-35s don't work with you. Our Apaches don't work without you. Our nuclear deterrent doesn't work without you. How do you advise us? On one analysis, you're kind of saying, well, you're becoming an unreliable ally. I understand it's not because of what you want, but because of the reality that we're in. How do you think we should, given our interdependence, how would you advise us to respond? How would you, if you were suddenly, I know this is not a very likely scenario, but never mind, supposing you're suddenly Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, what would you do given that interdependence?
I would say stick with your values and the rule of law and just, stick up for yourself. And we've seen this president back down. I mean, back down on the whole Greenland thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one week he's talking about sending the U.S. military to take somebody's stuff, right? Their territory. I mean, something that we learn in kindergarten, like in grade school, that we don't do this. And what ultimately happened is once the American people, realized what was going on, Donald Trump, I think, learned how unpopular that was. And the American people weren't having it. And then, at least temporarily, I mean, who knows what's going to happen here with him? He seems to change his mind all the time. But for now, he's backed down from this. And he has said he's not going to use force to take Greenland. Is he going to use some kind of coercion? I mean, who knows? And it's one of the dumbest things I've seen this guy do. I mean, think about this. I mean, Denmark is an ally. Greenland, we had more military bases. Greenland didn't kick us out. We decided that we didn't need that capability there anymore. Why would you? And then, so then he starts talking about, we'll pay, tens, hundreds of billions of dollars for Greenland. Why do you want to pay for something that you get for free? I mean, if we want to have a bigger force there,
It's a new approach to business, really.
I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. You go to Greenland and you just ask nicely and say, hey, we would like to, position these forces here. It's in our mutual best interest for our national security. I'm pretty confident early last year, before he started saying these crazy things, the Prime Minister of Greenland would have said, great, it helps our economy.
Would you say to us, given where we are, look, hang on, there'll be a new administration, it'll be different, we'll be a reliable ally again? Or would you say, listen, you guys have got to get used to the fact that, like it or not, we're an unreliable ally now, and you're going to have to think about, being more independent?
Well, I think the former. I mean, there's going to be another, hopefully, if things go well, there will be another administration. My hope is in the House and the Senate in 2026. Democrats are in charge. We'll have, more levers of government to keep this administration in check. And in 2028, we have a Democrat is elected president. Maybe we don't get back to where we were previously. I think that relationship is going to be somewhat changed. But with a Democratic administration, I think European nations should be confident that you're going to have a reliable partner. And I think we can figure out a way where maybe we even get to a better place than we were before, where we can mutually benefit from, the advantages that we all have in different ways. I think also there's some ways that the, European nations beyond just defense spending can, strengthen their military capability in areas that have never been a real focus before. As somebody who sits on the Armed Services and the Intelligence Committee, there's some lacking capability there that could also benefit us. So I think we can get to a better place, and I hope, and this is what I was trying to do in Munich, is to reassure our European allies that the America that you knew, that we've had a strong relationship since World War II for 80 years. It's still there. It's just not at the top level. You go one level down, and that's still where most of us are.
You mentioned the midterms. Speaking of them, Donald Trump doesn't like elections that he lost or thinks he's going to lose, as we know, and he's already started a narrative around the midterms. He's talked about nationalizing elections. It's kind of a little bit unclear to me what exactly he means with a lot of the stuff. Maybe he doesn't know what he means. What do you think is the real danger? Is there a danger that elections are interfered with? Is that just too difficult in America? Are you really worried about his authoritarian instincts, or are they over-exaggerated? Where do you think we're at with it?
Yeah, I'm worried about it. You mentioned he said nationalizing the elections. In that same statement, he said, a few sentences later, he said something like, we're going to have Republicans in charge of elections in 15 states, making some kind of change, politicizing the apparatus that administers the elections. Guy doesn't like losing. I mean, I don't know what's wrong with this guy. This guy was elected president of the United States in 2016, again in 2024, fairly. He lost in 2020. I mean, get over yourself. I mean, he can't accept that he had lost an election.
Well, it's also a bit weird because he claims he lost when he was in charge, but one when the Democrats were in charge. I've never quite worked out how he
what's
squared
wrong
that,
with somebody psychologically that just cannot, his ego does not allow him to believe that he lost this election. And because of it, he's going to put the next election at risk. He's going to try to show he grabbed all those ballots in Georgia. He's going to do some kind of, ridiculous audit and try to prove to the American people that they were stolen. Now, so we've got challenges ahead, but I think we're up to the challenge. There's 2,000 counties across the United States. So it's a hard thing to do, but we've got to be vigilant about it. And we've got to convince the people who don't support this kind of behavior, we got to convince them to vote.
I'm not going to put you on the spot about whether you're going to be a presidential candidate or a candidate for the Democratic nomination, because I think most people think that, you might well be. What do you think the Democrats got wrong? Because a lot of people would say you really misjudged the American people last time quite significantly and allowed back in Donald Trump. And I'm interested to know about how you think the battle evolves. Who could beat MAGA? Why would they beat them? It's clear that a lot of Americans were very dissatisfied with you on the cost of living, were very dissatisfied with you on immigration. What is your answer to that?
Well, we clearly have to focus on issues that matter to the American people, and that often comes down to their personal finances, how much stuff costs, and their safety. And the safety could be a number of things. I mean, it could also be healthcare. I mean, this guy's kicked, it's going to be millions of people off of their healthcare coverage. That, in theory, makes you less safe. People are poorer. Young people, can't afford a place to live anymore. I was looking at some statistics this morning, like in the 1960s, by the age of 30, 50-something% of Americans were married and had a home. That number is bought a home. That number is 12% today. The average age of somebody being able to afford a house is 40. Used to be in the 20s. I bought my first house when I was 29 or 30 years old. That's not a reality for my daughters. Who my oldest one is 30 right now. She's married. She's got one kid on the way. That's not in the realm of possibility. So, and it's not just Republicans. I mean, both Democrats and Republicans in government have failed, especially failed young people. Half of Americans are having a hard time affording food right now. Something like, 50 people have the same amount of wealth as the bottom 50%. It's unsustainable. So we've got to get to the issues and communicate in a way that people get it, that we are better for them. If they elect us, their lives will be better. If you continue to elect Republicans, especially people like Donald Trump, that's great if you're a billionaire. He cut taxes for billionaires. So we've got to have the right message. We got to communicate it with people. We got to convince them that their lives will be better if we're elected.
Do you think then that what we might see is a populist of the left effect, where we've seen Mamdani's rise in New York? You might call him a populist of the left. You've outlined people, ordinary Americans' frustration with the cost of living, inability to get by. I mean, I would probably think most people think of you as quite a mainstream candidate, and maybe that's what Americans want. But where do you think the axis of, and I'd also love to hear afterwards what you think about what the read over to British politics is. And I don't know how closely you follow British politics, but let's talk about the American system first. Where do you think that leaves you as kind of quite a mainstream candidate?
Well, you're talking about 2028. We have an election in 2026, so we've got to get through, and we've got to win either the House or the Senate, or we do not have, the influence that we need to hold, this president accountable. So we've got to fix that. So in 2028, I mean, what kind of candidate is the right person? I don't know. I mean, this has not been my business for my adult life. I'm 61 years old. I spent 25 years on active duty. Part of it flying off of an aircraft carrier, part as a test pilot. I flew, combat missions, and then I had this great opportunity to become an astronaut. I did that for more than a decade, flying 4 space shuttle flights. I'm an engineer. I'm not like a lot of these guys are lawyers and have been career politicians and worked their way up from the state legislature or the school board, and they've been dreaming their entire lives to be a U.S. senator or to be president. When I was a kid, I wanted to be the first person that walked on the planet Mars. I failed miserably at that. I did not get close.
Oh, no, it's,
I didn't get close.
you never know.
Bad timing, I suppose. So I don't know if I'm like, would be the right person for this in 2028, and I haven't made a decision about it. And I do worry that we're going to have, like the problems that we have today might look kind of quaint, in 2028. You think about AI. I've been thinking a lot about this technology and what it means for young people, middle career, about their jobs, about the economy in the United States. There are estimates that within a decade we could have 12 to 15 million more unemployed people. What are they going to do? How are they going to afford to live?
2 final questions. One, what do you think the lesson for British politics is about Trump and MAGA? Now, I should clarify what I'm sort of asking there. There are lots of people in Britain who like Donald Trump. I don't think he's hugely popular individually, but there are people who certainly like his agenda, who certainly believe his toughness on immigration is something they very much want to emulate. Some of what Reform wants to do in this country, and Nigel Farage, is not dissimilar in terms of much tougher policies on immigration and so on. And there are lots of people here who really don't like Trump and think he's an authoritarian and don't want that here. What is the lesson of Trump and MAGA to British politics, do you think, if there is one?
Well, I mean, my view, I'm in the other party. I think Trump's been a disaster. I don't think this is a guy you want to try to, emulate. Certainly Democrats got the border security issue wrong. I don't think, me personally, I had to keep pushing the Biden administration to do more on the border, got them to do more on the border. It was too little, too late. My view, border security is national security. At the same time, their internal immigration enforcement policy has been a disaster, ripping communities apart, killing Americans, deporting U.S. citizens, beating people up, going into people's homes without warrants. Well, that part has been a disaster. So I would suggest you don't copy that.
Yeah, I was just going to throw in there that I was listening to an interview on Irish radio with this Irish young man who was there on a work visa. Admittedly, he'd outstayed his tourist visa originally, but he's been held for 5 months, and he described the place he was held as like a concentration camp. And I did think, I just thought I would never hear that about America.
Right. So my suggestion would be reject people like Donald Trump. You don't want to be authoritarians running democracies. You don't want somebody like him in charge of the UK. Or, we don't want him in charge. I don't, in the United States. Sure, some people did. That's why he was elected. But we've got to find, leaders who... I think being a strong leader is important.
Yeah.
I think sticking up for our national interests is important, but we can do it in a way that doesn't alienate our allies. We don't try to punish our allies. I think we're stronger together and we can mutually benefit by a strong relationship. So I don't want to see somebody like him, running any country that's allied with us.
Yeah, and I mentioned Reform. I should make clear that Reform is, most for Reform's agenda, they would very strongly say they're nothing like Trump, only on the kind of tougher line on immigration, which you would say is not dissimilar to your policy. Would they say they've got anything to do with the MAGA agenda, I think. My final question is, and it's a kind of difficult one, I guess, for you to answer, because I don't sense these issues are really things you would naturally want to talk about, but you are having quite. It's no fun being prosecuted or someone trying to prosecute you. It's expensive. You've got to hire lawyers. You've had death threats, I believe, and obviously
a lot.
Yeah,
well, that happens. The president says you should be hanged.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of supporters out there, that
Well, he
take those things
walked
pretty
that
literally.
back, but the death
He
threats
did.
remain, right?
Yeah, but not everybody remembers he walks
Yeah.
it back, right?
Right.
So they do remain, and they're not only against me. They're against my wife, former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who was shot in the head.
Yeah. Horrific.
Nearly assassinated.
Yeah.
She gets death threats against her because of what Donald Trump has said about me. He needs to do more than just walk it back. But that's going to exist. And you're right, lawyers, they're very expensive. I don't know if they're as expensive here as they
I think anyone's as expensive as an American lawyer, probably, but it's a different conversation.
they are. But I've got to tell this administration and this president and the Secretary of Defense that they cannot violate my constitutional rights, because that matters and should matter to all Americans.
But I suppose my question really is, in the dead of night, when you're weighing all this up, it's a difficult balance, right? Because you're getting death threats. It's really difficult to live like that, I'm assuming. But on the other hand, you feel like the core questions of your country's democracy are being challenged. So I'm just interested.
For me, that's much more important. And in the dead of
you don't ever think
first of all, in the dead of night, I'm asleep.
Yeah,
I am not losing any sleep over this guy.
That's good.
I've been through a lot worse than this. I mean, I've nearly been shot down multiple times. I mean, a missile blow up next to my airplane, an SA-6 in the first Gulf War, AAA. I've almost flown into the ground a bunch of times. I flew on a spaceship built by the lowest bidder, that could nearly blow up on me. So I've been through a lot in my life. I am not going to let this guy intimidate me. It is much more important than just me. I feel like I'm sticking up not only for 2 million retired service members and their right to say what they believe, but another 350 million Americans who, if they watch what's going on with me and I don't stick up for them, they're going to back away from, saying anything that is negative about this administration. It was a feature of our democracy right from the very beginning that you have a right to speak out and say things about the government when you disagree with what the government is doing.
Senator Kelly, it's been a fascinating chat. Thanks so much for joining us.
Appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
That's all we have time for now. If you haven't already hit subscribe on YouTube or on any podcast platform, please do, to make sure you never miss out on an episode. But for now, thank you very much for joining us.